Hey everybody, today I'm going to be giving my opinions on all the wonders in Civ 3, and I'm going to be going through them one by one, so if you're too lazy to watch all that, you can just skip to the end and I have the list at the end. So, things I took into consideration. The value in question that I wanted to consider was, will it help you win the game? Like, a lot of wonders are really fun, a lot of them will teach you to play the game well, or they're crutches which prevent you from learning how to play the game well, but I'm not going to consider those factors, just will it help you win the game? Yeah, and this is an average across all game settings and all map sizes and everything like that. Obviously, the Great Lighthouse, for example, is not a useful wonder on Pangaea, and it is an exceptionally useful wonder on Archipelago, so I take that all into account. The two wonders that I did omit are the Manhattan Project and the United Nations. That's because, you get a significant effect of these wonders even if you don't build them. The Manhattan Project, especially, someone else building the Manhattan Project is identical to you having built it. So, yeah, it's just too much to consider, so I left those two out of the analysis. Although, for the record, United Nations, amazing wonder, Manhattan Project is, a little, it is what it is. So, I also assume that you actually build the wonder, because otherwise, if you get a great scientist, you can rush any wonder for free, but if you do that, then the cost is no longer consideration, so it didn't seem fair to include. So, starting from the bottom, we have by far the worst wonder in the game, and I'd say you should never ever build this wonder. It is the Oracle. So it gives bonus happiness. It says it doubles the effects of temples, but actually check this out, and it doesn't double the effect of the culture from the temples, only the happiness bonus. So if you have a temple in literally every city in your empire, you get one happy face, or one extra content face, until theology, which is not very long at all. It expires super quickly. Yeah, and it's also, if you're building a wonder this early in the game, it should be the pyramids. This wonder will set you back so far in terms of your expansion, and it doesn't really give you any tangible rewards, and by the time you get to theology, it's just used up, it's gone, so, yeah. To that note, I mean, at least this wonder lasts forever, but it is literally a cathedral. 3 happy citizens in the city, and that's it, that's all it does. It's not worth paying 200 shields. A cathedral costs 160 shields, or 80 shields if you're religious. This costs 200 shields. It's ridiculous. It is kind of worth, if you're playing Byzantium and you need an early golden age and you're landlocked, I might consider building it, but otherwise, yeah, pretty much bottom of the barrel. So the Great Wall, this is a really cool wonder in theory, but the effects are just, custom made to be kind of useless. The Barbarian bonus, that's really a big thing on the higher difficulty levels where barbarians are super strong and you don't have as much of a bonus against them. But on all those difficulty levels, it's just pretty much impossible to build this wonder, or at least there are much better wonders you can build for the same cost. And walls, of course, are made obsolete by growing to size 7, so it's only really useful early game, and then it goes obsolete with metallurgy. Yeah, and walls just they're not very expensive. Is it really such a problem that you got 5 cities that might be vulnerable to an enemy attack? Why not just spend the 20 shields on those walls? They don't cost any maintenance. You're not saving that by building this wonder, and then save the extra 100 shields and keep them to yourself. Yeah, the one thing that this is useful for is if you're doing military conquest, then instantly, as soon as you conquer a city, it has walls in it, which is kind of a pretty big perk. And the walls that you have cannot be destroyed by catapults, but the AI doesn't do that. They don't use catapults on cities. That's useful in multiplayer, but this video is only considering single player, so yeah, it's a pretty bad wonder. So the SETI project, I actually ran the numbers on this. Awful. So one shield is worth about, in non-accelerated production, one shield is worth about, or even in accelerated production, sorry. One shield is worth about 2.5 gold, I'd say. It depends on the situation, but more or less. This thing, even if you're near a golden age and your city is massive and it has a river running through it, this is only really going to generate a maximum of 50 gold per turn, the SETI project, and it costs 1,000 shields. And the tech tree is almost over, which means that this wonder is never, ever going to pay itself off. The only reason I ranked it higher than the other wonders in this list are because it's not going to mess up your growth phase to build this wonder, like is the case with the Oracle and the Mausoleum and the Great Wall. So it's not as big of a big problem that new players always rush towards this wonder the way they might rush towards these 3. Speaking of which, Colossus. Like I said, the pyramids rule I said about the Oracle still applies here. If you're building a wonder this early in the game, it better be the pyramids. This is a really cool wonder in theory, especially like in combination with some of the other wonders, like not the SETI project, but Newton's University and Copernicus's observatory, maybe Shakespeare's theater. You could potentially get a decent amount of gold on this, but again, kind of underwhelming. Realistically, like early in the game, you're only gonna have like a size 8 city maybe in your capital, and that's if you're not building settlers there, and that's like what, 8 gold, plus maybe some multipliers if you have a library. It's just, yeah, it can kind of work on lower difficulty levels, but above region, you should never really be building this wonder. Just do something more useful instead. So longevity, this is a really cool effect. The problem is it comes way too late in the game for it to be much use. This is actually a popular wonder in the future scenario. It's extremely expensive, but if you can build it, it's just, yeah, amazing. The problem is all the land territory has been taken by the time in the game where you can build this wonder, and you should have enough workers. The only situation I can imagine where you wouldn't have enough workers and you really need to pump out those workers and have your cities growing fast is because of if you get nuked or something like that. But yeah, I mean, this is just such a cool wonder. I couldn't give it too bad of a ranking, but yeah, not really useful. Cure for cancer. On the other hand, this is like a consistently useful wonder. It's just really underwhelming. Like, it has no effect. It's just one unhappy citizen in every city for 1,000 shields. Like I said before, it's like one luxury resource. This is, yeah, like at least it can have like a certain value if you have like a million cities. Like if you have 100 cities, you get 100 happy faces. Yeah, maybe worth it, but otherwise not very good. The internet, again, at least it's like compared to the SETI project. At least if you have a lot of cities on the same continent, you can get like some value out of this. It might like propel you towards a culture victory, but yeah, you don't really need science by the time you're far enough in the tech tree that you can build this wonder. Temple of Artemis. This is a really interesting wonder on paper. And it's good in situations, but the issue is it expires at education, and I think it's the most expensive wonder in the ancient era. It's good for conquest. It's good if you're like spamming out a lot of cities and you got like a few settler factories up and running. The issue is like if you have those settler factories up and running, how do you have enough shields for a wonder this early in the game? But on like difficulties like Regent, for example, or Monarch, this could be quite useful. It also will expand your borders. Like, I think the culture is the best thing about this wonder, that just across the board you can have expanded borders, so maximum land area. Shakespeare's theater. Not much to say here. It's only available through a weird tech path, which kind of like, yeah, it makes it kind of iffy. It's not the kind of thing you'd really prioritize. Like, you just have to invest so much teching to go down that path. And democracy is kind of overrated in Civ 3. It's mostly useful as an early hospital, and if you wanted to do like other wonders, like Newton's University or universal suffrage or theory of evolution, then obviously having your cities being like size 15 before any other city in the game can be size 15 is an advantage. And also eight happy faces. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's significant. Magellan's Voyage. This is really only a military wonder, because military expansion, by the time you build this wonder, like all the island cities have been taken up by then. It's also kind of made obsolete by airports and air bases, just not nearly as useful. It's good if you're doing naval invasions of other continents, or islands if you're doing an archipelago map. Otherwise, yeah, it's kind of meh. Hanging Gardens, not much to say here, just a middle of the road happiness wonder. Expires, not especially early, but yeah. Knights Templar. The unit produced isn't as good as you might think it is. Like, seeing that it's the most powerful attack stat of any unit at that era in the game is really appetizing, but it's just, they're slow. And the wonder expires faster. Like with the Statue of Zeus, you can at least delay getting metallurgy to prevent the wonder from expiring and to like get more effect out of it, but you really shouldn't be avoiding getting steam power if you can get steam power, because it's just a massive advantage to your civilization. If you can use it, make use of strong infantry, like especially if you're doing like naval combat in archipelago map, I could see this being quite useful. Yeah, another middle of the road wonder. Sistine Chapel. Good for religious civs who have a lot of cathedrals and can build them cheap. The issue with this wonder is that even though it's like hypothetically three happiness per city, which is quite significant, you need that cathedral up and running, which means you need the temple up and running, which means if you're doing military conquest, it's not really so helpful because it's going to take forever for you to get those buildings in those cities. It's also like comes at a time in the game where like Leonardo's workshop and Sun Tzu's are also a priority, so you might want to prefer building those wonders instead. But if you're just going for culture and not really for expansion or military, this is a good wonder to have. Universal suffrage. I actually probably overrate this wonder. It is really, really, really underwhelming even when it does work. Yeah, because you have to think about it, like, if you're not going to war, and this is a useless wonder, if you're playing a government like monarchy or fascism or communism or whatever that doesn't have war wariness, this is also useless. It's only useful when you are going to war, but you're also playing a government with war wariness. So that's like half the situations off the bat, it's useless. On top of that, it's not going to solve all your problems. It might be good for like a few happiness faces in those cities, but it's not going to prevent like the total shutdown that occurs when you get to like really, really bad war weariness in Republic, or God forbid you're in democracy. It's not going to solve all your problems. So yeah. Nunes University. You have shields to spare this, you might as well build it, especially if like a big city on a river or something like that. Maybe a city with the Colossus or Shakespeare's theater. Pretty similar to Copernicus. There's nothing much to say here. Copernicus is slightly better because it comes earlier, and it lets you like tech the late medieval era that much faster, which is really important. Bach's Cathedral is a really flexible wonder in terms of the happiness it provides, as long as you're on the same continent. And it works in recently conquered cities, so if you're doing a military playstyle, it's good for that. And it doesn't require any buildings like a temple or a cathedral up and running before you get the happiness. So yeah, pretty solid wonder. Great Lighthouse. This is a really situational wonder. Obviously, it's not very useful on Pangea maps, but it can... like, it's one of the few wonders that gets built on by the human player on SID difficulty, or at least a few ancient era wonders. It's good for expansion. You can claim a lot of islands you wouldn't otherwise be able to access before the AI can. It's good for tech trading. You can like discover other AI civs and get an advantage that way. And it's also good for military conquest. Like, it does everything that Magellan's Voyage does. And then all these two other things. And then you can move on to C-squares. That's really key. I don't know. It's also pretty affordable. So yeah, definitely if you're playing a naval map or like a naval playstyle, pick this one up. The pyramids. This, just like effect for effect, this is one of the best wonders in the game. The issue is that it comes so absolutely early and it's so expensive that is just so much to sacrifice to build this wonder. Like, sure, you can invest 400 shields in this wonder, or you could just build 5 settlers, and those 5 settlers would build many cities out of those new cities that you built, and the effect would ripple from there. So you can't really say conclusively whether it's better to build the pyramids or to not build the pyramids, unless you know a lot about the situation you're in. If you have like a ton of land area, definitely go for it. But I think new players should a lot of the time should focus more on ignoring wonders early game and just establishing themselves in a powerful position. Smith's Trading Company. I haven't really ran the numbers on this, so I can't really say too much. It's a good wonder. You'll get a solid return on it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. And it's never going to hurt you the way that building the pyramids might, or yeah, any wonder like that. Theory of Evolution. This is like, it's an underwhelming effect. It's only 2 techs, but it's really solid. I don't know, what can you say? You can either rush towards bombers by getting the middle techs in the industrial era, or you can go for atomic theory plus electronics. Those are both 2 very expensive tech, so you get like good return for your money by picking these techs up right away, and that pretty much guarantees you the Hoover Dam. And speaking of the Hoover Dam, we have Leonardo's Workshop, which is not the Hoover Dam. Leonardo's Workshop, it is a very good wonder, don't get me wrong. It can have ridiculous return on investment. It's also just like a massive quality of life improvement. It just makes the game run a lot smoother and simpler. But that alone won't win you the game. And unless you're doing a lot of upgrading, the returns on this wonder won't be incredible. Often you're better off building Sun Tzu's, or even hypothetically, the Sistine Chapel. But yeah, it's just really convenient, and it fits in with many offensive or defensive strategies even. Like, you never need to build another defensive unit again if you don't want to. You can just keep on upgrading your spearmen to pikemen to musketeers to riflemen to infantry, etc. Hoover Dam. So generally, the best effects in the game are bonuses to production and bonuses to growth. You'll notice that aside from the granary, there's not really any bonuses to growth in any building or wonder. Obviously, the pyramids gives granaries, so it has that effect. And there's no bonuses to production until the factory in the industrial era, and that's for a specific reason, because production is very strong and because growth is very strong. And this is just absolutely amazing wonder to have. It's just plus 50% production in all your cities, so you can't really say no to that. It's also really buildable even on higher difficulty levels, because you can get the atomic theory and electronics, and the AI won't normally go down those paths. They get distracted in the early industrial era. They want to get like fascism and espionage and communism and ironclads and all those dumb texts that you don't need. You can beeline for the important stuff, and this gives you a real advantage. Sun Tzu's Art of War. Barracks aren't the most expensive building to build, especially if you're a militaristic civ. But think of all the maintenance you save. Like, if you have 30 cities that would otherwise have barracks, you don't have to pay maintenances on the free barracks you get from this wonder. So that you're saving 30 gold per turn, which is kind of ridiculous. Yeah, it's just absolute great wonder. If you're playing an even remotely militaristic style, just having those barracks in your cities is just a great thing to go for. If you already have barracks set up in some of your cities, you can just sell those barracks. You get like 10 gold back. It's not bad. And also in newly conquered cities. This is worth a lot because it means that your units that you use to take the city can heal up instantly. Like, they heal to full health instead of just 2 HP per turn. And it also means you can upgrade your units in those new cities. So yeah, just a lot of utility from this. The Great Library. So I debated in my head between this wonder being first place or second place. This wonder just gives a boatload of cash, and the way the AI plays, this is really, really exploitable. Like, against human players, what they can do is like avoid trading texts with each other to like prevent you from getting the free texts, and you just have to kind of sit there and wait for yourself to receive those texts. But no, the AI will just do all the teching for you, and you could just save thousands or hundreds of gold, usually thousands. The AI doesn't prioritize literature, so this is a really buildable wonder on any difficulty level. Even on Cid, I'd say it's the most commonly built wonder on Cid. Definitely the most commonly built in the ancient era. The only disadvantage is on the earlier difficulties, the AI texts painfully slow, which means you'll get more gold while you're still getting the effects of this wonder, but you might be better off if you just like rushed ahead of the AI and established an advantage that way. So the number one wonder, I debated a bit, like I said, but just the return on investment of this wonder is ridiculous, and I had to go with it. So the Gallic Swordsmen, which is the unique unit for the Celts, has the same stats as the Ancient Cavalry, except the Ancient Cavalry has 1 more HP. So you could say that the Ancient Cavalry is about 25% better than the Gallic Swordsmen. The Gallic Swordsmen cost 50 shields, and generally people think that... Or no, is it 40 shields? Anyway. Basically, somewhere between the Knight and the Gallic Swordsman is the Ancient Cavalry in terms of relative unit power, which means after like 3 to 4 Ancient Cavalry come out, you've already recouped the 200 cost, because realistically you'd probably pay like 50, 55 shields for these things if you could build them just straight up in your civilization. Yeah, and you can get like dozens of these things just because metallurgy is a really avoidable tech. Like, it could be the last tech you get before you go into the industrial era. And these units are really powerful even into the industrial era. So yeah, they're always worth having, and they just do so much for you. They're ridiculously useful for conquering enemy civs early game, and if you don't want to do any conquering, that's great. all you have to do is build this wonder, and you never have to build any other unit again, because just the utility of these things will just keep your civilization safe in most situations. So yeah, that's my pick for the best wonder in the game. So we got our tier list. You might have noticed the colors as I went along the way. So the Oracle is the only one I'd say never build that. These ones are usually bad. The yellow wonders are like the wonders from the modern era, where it's like, it's not really going to set you back to build these wonders in a lot of situations, because you just got a million shields that you can spend on anything, but it's just not really going to help you that much. These are just your average situational good wonders. You might want to consider building them. These are great wonders with some caveats. These are just great wonders. In most situations, it's worth having them, and you can get a great return. And the best two wonders of the game, just miles above everything else, are probably the Great Library and the Statue of Zeus. And maybe Sun Tzu's Little. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what your favorite wonder is.